Hey everybody, so I'm going to share for the Common Data Model Working Group and the Data Quality Working Group. So we revamped our purpose a little bit this year, and I really like it because of this phrase in the middle where we are aiming to make the OMOP Common Data Model the premier observational health data model in the world. And we do this by ensuring the integrity and usability of the model by providing guidance on data standardization best practices. So I'm really excited about that, and I think we're on our way to becoming the premier data model, but I like having it in writing. Okay, next slide. So our first objective is to facilitate collaboration and alignment between the CDM working group and other working groups throughout the community. And you saw we did a lot of this last year where we invited many groups around the community to come speak to us. We've already had a lot of good engagement as we continue that through this year. But also we are collaborating very closely with Themis and the Data Quality Working Group to host a hackathon. You'll hear more about this in coming weeks. We're still working with the steering committee to determine what this is going to look like and how large it's going to be. But we're really excited about this so that we can clarify some best practices related to data standardization, and then also maybe instead of document, but also clarify some prior decisions made by the CDM working group. We're aware that we have some decisions in different places that we've made, but I don't think they are clear and transparent for the community, so we'd like to rectify that. All right, next slide. And so then our second objective is to continue to make our data model the premier data model in the world by reducing technical debt and improving documentation. And really, if you know, maybe you don't, there is a package we use to instantiate the common data model. You can use it in your environment. So we want to get the CDM package onto CRAN. That really legitimizes us. And then we had a lot of discussions last year about cleaning up some of our existing documentation and removing outdated documentation. For example, removing CDM version 6 from the website, adding information about extensions, expansions, add-ons, that sort of thing, and what we expect from community contributors if they have something that they think should be added to the model. Next slide. So one thing I'm very excited to tell you guys, I didn't realize, I wasn't sure how hard it would be, but we did get onto CRAN this past week on the 7th. And just like my little picture at the bottom, I asked AI for a cute cranberry holding a sign, and it gave me a sign that says fresh crabbenberry cranberry juice. So they're not our overlords yet. All right. So moving on. I also helped to lead the Data Quality Working Group, and we recently renamed it the Network Data Quality Working Group because we exist to recommend, enable, and develop best practices related to observational data quality at the level of a federated network. And I think that last piece is really important because it's not just us working in a vacuum, but across our networks. So our first objective is we want to improve data quality reporting for the OHDSI community. So Katie has been doing a wonderful job helping us drive to complete what we're calling these information pages. And once we get those complete, I think she'll be sharing those with you all and show you what these look like. But really what we have learned over the past few years is that we need better ways to communicate with people who are using the DQD and who want to follow OHDSI best practices. We need better ways to communicate what it means when you find a data quality failure and what to do about it. And I think that action step is extremely important. And that's what we're really going to be focusing on this year. And that's going to take the form of a new report, potentially at least one, potentially two new reports coming out of the DQD. And then as part of our work with Themis, we're going to be collaborating with the Themis and CDM working groups. And what we want to do is really make sure we are holding the line across all three of these working groups. So as the CDM, we manage like the structure of the model and those high level conventions. Themis is really focused on those specific conventions. When you have a specific type of data, what are you supposed to do with it? And then really the data quality dashboard and our data quality checks should be evaluating that those conventions are being held across the network. So that's what this objective is really about, is making sure that anything that Themis says that we are adding a new data quality check should it be required. And then this is kind of our reach objective, but I'm very excited about it because we want to continue to think about how we assess a data set or a data source for fitness for use. I think this is a big question across the landscape of observational data quality. It's being brought up in the literature constantly, and I think people are very interested in how we are doing this. So our big goal really for this year is to define what fitness for use means in the context of an OHDSI network study. And then we want to assess our tools that we currently have at our disposal. So if you remember last year, we talked a little bit about data diagnostics. So we want to say, you know, with that first version, is this doing what we need it to do? And then if we identify any improvements, we're going to work to implement those and really help bring that tool or maybe something else up to help us assess that definition of fitness for use.
Great.
So yeah, this is our reach goal, but we're very excited. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Claire. Sorry to interrupt there. All right, next up is our Asia Pacific work group, and this will be led by Mui.
Hi. Okay, on APAC, very similar to Claire. Our goals actually very different from Claire. Claire decided that they're going to change some of their definition. We're actually reversed. We're sticking to our definition from 2023 and then doing the same thing, utilizing the same 3 OKR themes for 2024 as well. But before we go into 2024, just to show you what it was that we're trying to do in 2023, well, our 3 themes are around research, training, and communication, right? And what we've been able to accomplish last year. So very proud of the fact that we created a new scientific forum where folks are able to come in and discuss anything that's tied to the implementation of OMA. And then we've had 41 publications, right? We were trying to train folks on how to do studies, and we, for the first time, participated in a global, as the SOS challenge. We ran one in APAC, which is very, very complex and was great. From a communicational perspective, again, very proud. I'm going to keep talking about it. We got 2 Titan Awards. Okay, so and we continue to have our community calls. Our volume of people are going up. We're constantly, our newsletters, hopefully folks are reading those. If you don't have them, sign up and you can get those. And as always, we held our APAC symposium, and that one was in the beautiful city of Sydney. Perfect weather last year. Okay, so if we go into 2024, which is, thank you. Again, our themes are the same, but our objective in each one is a little bit different. Under research, instead of training now, we wanted to conduct another SOS challenge in APAC, right? So we learned how to do it last year. Now we want to do it ourselves this year. We also want to try to replicate Cindy's SOS challenge in the US and see if we can do that on our own without so much help, right? So training wise, we want to do more in-person stuff. So having more in-person training in APAC now that COVID is over. Let's get ourselves sick with flu or other viruses, right? So we're trying to do 2 of those. Actually, one of them is being planned in Thailand in April right now, tentatively, and we have to figure out when the second one is. We also want to figure out how to train the APAC community on more research through the SOS challenges that we're going to do under the research side. From the communication perspective, we are going to do exactly the same thing we did last year. The theme, though, in our community call now very similar to Claire, is actually trying to understand and collaborate with other working groups. So our theme is actually inviting a bunch of the working groups that the APAC team wants to know about to talk to us about what's going on. For example, Claire talked about the data network quality working group, right? She's coming over, I think tomorrow, right, Claire, to talk to us about that and what you guys are doing. So we have a lot of collaboration that we're trying to form there. Okay, if you can go to our next slide. So if I've told you things that you might be interested, like the on-site trainings, help us with that. Sign up for our working group. This is a list of when our community calls are, as well as our scientific forums. Our scientific forums, we would love to get more topics from folks as to what they're talking about. So again, it's not just around the research side. Like last year, we had Anna come and speak to us. Thank you, Anna. Three separate times about the vocabulary and how to update vocabulary, because that's something everybody was interested in, right? So if you have an interest in either joining us as one of our speakers to talk about what your working groups are doing, or even what you guys are doing, please reach out to us. And if you have an interest in even listening to our stuff, come sign up and join us. That's us.
Great, thank you, Mui. Next up, one of our newest work groups, maybe our newest, one of our newest, the industry work group. This will be led by Sarah Seeger.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So hi, everyone. This is indeed very much a new working group. We had our first meeting at the Global Symposium back in October. So we're still establishing ourselves, but essentially what is this working group about? It's really an opportunity to bring together those that are in life sciences, pharma, biotech, and to really sort of try and represent our sort of core interests and sort of, push those towards OHDSI, but also see how we can actually work a lot more closely together. So really with that, I think one of the key drivers here is trying to, and seems to be a very sort of common denominator across all the other working groups, but it's around that active collaboration and participation with the other working groups. So we've set our OKRs for this year. So if you go to the app, fantastic. We've got three sort of key things. So essentially, we want to build on working with the data marketplace. So we are going to work very closely with Claire and the CDM, because I know that there's a very similar sort of data catalogue being put together. But here, what we really want to do is to sort of have that industry focus, so to really think about and showcasing some of the data sets that are open and available for industry sponsored studies. And then a bit around sort of like go to market. So obviously it's a term that we use sort of very often in the industry, but essentially we want to build an advocacy group. And then big one, collaboration. We want to identify some use cases and really work with other working groups. So I think the next slide goes into a bit more detail around what some of our key milestones are, and we do think we can really achieve these this year. So as I mentioned, data marketplace, we got a catalogue, OMOP data sets, industry focused. I think Claire's going to be very busy. She's going to APAC next week or this week. She's coming to industry in March. So snap her up. Claire's clearly very available. And then with this data marketplace, we want to obviously build a framework that goes with that. So to sort of showcase and teach others as to how the wider community can actually interact with this marketplace. With regards to the advocacy group, we're designing this from scratch. So we want to work out what the structure and the purpose of that really is and give it some focus. And then we're looking to really create some recommendations around some of the broader OHDSI and OMOP models, which are used for regulatory and sort of government purposes, and to make sure they really are truly aligned between government regulation and industry. And then collaboration, as I said, we're going to work on 2 to 3 use cases. And also we're going to start sort of really working with, we'll identify some key work group partnerships. Obviously, we want to work with absolutely everyone, but I think to sort of get this going and off the ground, then we'll identify a couple of key partnerships and really sort of start to build those use cases. That's all from the industry working group.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Reminder, anybody who wants to join work groups, and especially these newer work groups, there is a form right on the website. You check it and we will get you to the right place. All right, next up, now not as new as some of the other work groups, but still one of the fairly new work groups in OHDSI is the Eye Care and Vision Research Work Group. We heard a great presentation from Michelle Hreiber at the Global Symposium, and she is now going to go over their 2024 OKRs. Michelle?
Thank you. So as we talked about at the Global Symposium, our purpose is to advance the development and implementation of data standards in eye care and vision research, and also to support observational studies using ophthalmic data. So we have a fair amount of accomplishments from this past year, as we reported at the Global Symposium, but probably the biggest ones are doing a lot of our mapping analysis and addressing the gaps that we found in those, as well as supporting Cindy Kai's SOS challenge. Next slide. So we had our 3 objectives this year are similar to last year, but just trying to make more progress towards them. So we really want to continue advancing our data standards and especially around specific use cases, and making sure that we're submitting our missing concepts to SNOMED and LOINC. And then our second objective is actually to start implementing the mapping at multiple institutions. So we've gotten started with that for intraocular pressure, and we're hoping by the end of this year to at least get some visual acuity data mapped and implemented at 3 different institutions. And that's our most, arguably probably one of our most important data elements, but also the most complex. And then our third objective is a little new this year, but we're really trying to work on long-term sustainability for our group. So far, except for me, who's being funded right now by the National Eye Institute, everyone else is just a volunteer effort. So really trying to figure out how we can take advantage of grants and other types of funding to continue this work. So if anyone is interested in joining our work group, we'd love to have you. If anyone has any advice for us, particularly around the funding, we would love to hear it. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Our final work group update for today is our surgery and perioperative work group, and this will be led by Evan Minty.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I'm Evan Minty. I'm a general internist. I work out of the University of Calgary. Part of our clinical service there is in perioperative care. This work group is co-led by myself and Jenny Lane, who's an orthopedic surgeon at Queen Mary University in London, and also has had some great leadership from the Center for Surgical Sciences through Andreas and other participants there. So I'm going to describe you, actually, to start this presentation. You are interested in providing or generating evidence that improves clinical care, but you're tired of trying to figure out if your patient has type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes or both or neither in an observational record. And you're tired of seeing patients migrate in and out of system and in and out of data sets on timescales that were important for you looking for your outcomes. Within surgical sciences, we're interested in fairly distinct procedures that we think we can identify with high fidelity in a data set, and then we're interested in the next 60 days. And if that patient is captured for that next 60 days, we can learn a lot about their outcomes in that perioperative period. And so that's the goal of our work group, is to collaboratively generate the observational health evidence needed to improve care in that perioperative period. Our themes for our OKRs are across these areas: work group growth and processes, cohorts and characterization, community events and community evidence generation, and perioperative prediction. Go ahead. So for work group growth and processes, we'd love to have you guys on board. We'd also would love to involve at least 3 new members from 3 different surgical or perioperative science focused lab groups. We want to be creating an interface with the clinical community by presenting our work and OHDSI's capabilities in at least 1 surgical or perioperative medicine focused conference, and continue to establish strategic collaborations with other work groups in our community. Go ahead, Greg. Within cohorts and characterization, we need to finish some important work that Chris Knowles and others have really been instrumental in catalyzing. That's completion of the how often incidence rate characterizations across the 3 different studies that we have running there, and completion of a hip fracture study-thon through a network study that Jenny Lane is planning. We also want to explore, and this is some work that the CSS is very interested in looking into, proxies for pre and post-operative functional outcomes within the OHDSI network. So there may be data sets out there that might not have been subject to ETL within our network of databases that have a bit more in the way of physiologic testing, pre and post surgery, and we'd like to see if we can bring that data forward into our network to get a better idea as to more gold standard proxies for post-operative and preoperative function. For community events, we'd like to support at least one surgical cohort hackathon, largely focused on refining and creating new surgical cohorts. Go ahead, Craig. And finally, a big push this year will be the execution of a perioperative prediction study jointly with the PLP work group, looking at using the major non-cardiac surgery cohort and other surgical cohorts against outcomes of postoperative interest. So that's something that we'd like to push forward by the end of the year. And that's it. Please reach out. My coordinates are minty@odyssey.org or through the work group signups that Craig had mentioned.